The way we lead impacts the way people live. This world needs truly human leadership.
And lots of times employers say, well, Joey, I pay them every 2 weeks. Isn't that enough? That's enough in the sense that that's the ante-up chips to sit down at the table and play in the game. They worked, you're required to pay them. Yes, I understand it's challenging to make sure you have the cash flow to meet payroll whenever you need to make payroll, but that's not enough. That's just the basic foundation of, hey, I'm the employer, you're the employee. What we need to be doing is finding ways to show and tell and prove to the employee on a regular basis that they actually matter.
I'm Brent Stewart, your host. Thanks for listening. This podcast is an outreach of Barry-Wehmiller. You can find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter at Barry-Wehmiller, and find our podcasts, articles, and videos at trulyhumanleadership.com. Joey Coleman is the founder and chief experience composer of Design Symphony, a customer experience branding firm, and for almost 20 years, Joey has helped organizations retain their best customers and turn them into raving fans through his entertaining and actionable keynotes, workshops, and consulting. He is an award-winning speaker, and he is also the author of the #2 Wall Street Journal bestseller, Never Lose a Customer Again. And you can find out more about Joey at joeycoleman.com. Joey has a new book that's very appropriate for our current times, where we've had a great resignation and people are demanding better leaders and better work experiences. It's called Never Lose an Employee Again, and in this book, Joey shows leaders how to recreate the culture of their organization to one that is positive and engaging, that will improve retention and team member experience. And it's all centered around care. So we're going to start this episode out with Joey explaining what the cost is to an organization when they lose a team member.
In 2021, the turnover rate amongst employees in the United States cost United States employers over $700 billion. That's billion, right? So lots of money. If we actually look at and distill it down to the individual employee rate, depending on whose research you look at, the cost of an employee leaving, and then you need to rehire and refill that position, is somewhere between 100 and 300% of the annual salary of that job. As if the practical dollars impact wasn't significant enough, the impact on morale and the impact on productivity and the impact on efficiency within an organization, I would posit, are even more staggering, mainly because what happens is when an employee leaves, the employees who stay behind have two problems. Number one, they're asked to pick up the slack, to fill in for the missing employee, and that usually adds tasks and duties to their daily jobs list without any increase in compensation or title. And more importantly, or maybe more destructively, that leaves the employees who stay behind wondering, what did Sally know that I don't know? She left and is gone somewhere else. Did she see the writing on the wall? Was she privy to some information that I should have been aware of? And so as a result, the morale is taking two hits. It's taking a hit in terms of the amount of extra work that the employee who stays behind is supposed to or needs to fulfill. And it's also creating a hit on their psychological and emotional connection to the enterprise, because they're now beginning to doubt their own place and role in the organization. So I think regardless of whether we're measuring it in dollars, productivity, emotional impact, employees leaving is probably the biggest threat that an organization faces when it comes to their financial, their emotional, their mental success and well-being going forward.
You start off the book talking about something that you heard over and over and over with the many business leaders that you talked to for the book and talked to in other areas. Tell me what that common refrain was from the business leaders, and then tell me what your realization was out of that.
Brent, I've had the pleasure of speaking to audiences on all 7 continents. And to be honest, when I was speaking in Antarctica, it was not to the penguins. It was to explorers and folks down there. And the common refrain that I have heard from employers of all sizes in pretty much every industry imaginable in countries around the world is that I wish my employees cared as much about the business as I do. Now, to be honest, as an employer, there have been times when I've said that. I'm not proud to admit that, but it's true. What I realized, the more I explored employee experience, the more I looked at the Great Resignation and quiet quitting and all the reasons why employees are leaving at record levels, at a higher level right now than at any point in human history. What I realized is that while employers were saying, I wish my employees cared as much about the business as I do, employees were saying and thinking that they wished that the employer cared as much about them as they cared about the business. The problem is, I know enough business owners to know that they truly care about their people. They worry about them morning, noon, and night. They worry about making payroll. They worry about providing them with the benefits they need. They worry about growing their business and enterprise and making sure they have enough people on the team to be able to deliver on the promises in the marketplace and to their customers. But the challenge is the typical employee doesn't know that. They may have been told that by the employer, but they don't have a lot of evidence where they've seen or had it proven to them that the employer actually does care. And lots of times employers say, well, Joey, I pay them every 2 weeks. Isn't that enough? Well, that's enough in the sense that that's the ante-up chips to sit down at the table and play in the game. They worked, you're required to pay them. Yes, I understand it's challenging to make sure you have the cash flow to meet payroll whenever you need to make payroll, but that's not enough. That's just the basic foundation of, hey, I'm the employer, you're the employee. What we need to be doing is finding ways to show and tell and prove to the employee on a regular basis that they actually matter, that we care about them personally and professionally, that we have a vested interest in their long-term growth and success in the same way that we're asking them to have a vested interest in our long-term growth and success as their employer.
How central is care to everything that you write about in your book?
You know, I think in the modern era, what has happened post-COVID is that the typical employer globally has faced the conundrum of employees that don't seem as engaged. Now, let's be candid. Folks weren't engaged pre-COVID. So this has been, if anything, a magnifier, not an entirely new trend. What has changed is that employees, in many ways, if you'll forgive the expression, have realized that the employers have no clothes. They've realized that a lot of the things that they were fed in terms of the messaging and the way they were treated just don't hold up. And with the proliferation of global employment, the fact that almost every business on the planet now understands that folks can work remotely and still provide great value, the competition for top talent has moved beyond regional geographies. You know, 50 years ago, if you worked for an employer, statistically, chances were much better than not that your employer's headquarters was within 30 miles of your house. You commuted to work in the morning, you did your work during the day, you commuted home. Now, if you work for an employer whose headquarters is within 30 miles of your home, it tells me one of a few things. You maybe work in an industry where hands-on activity is required. You maybe have a hyper-specialized job or work in a small business that has a retail footprint. But if you don't work in one of those two categorizations of business enterprises, what it tells me is it's just a matter of time before you realize that you can work for someone beyond that scope. Or from the employer perspective, someone realizes that they can come for your people. The conversation I'm having with many employers right now in my consulting practice is, Joey, our top talent is being poached by international companies that are happy to have their employees work remotely. They have more flexible hours. And we're competing against industries and competitors that are significantly more capitalized, have a broader reach, and have a different philosophy than any of the other local competitors that used to be the ones who came for our people.
You know, there used to be a saying, all politics are local, talking about how much more important the alderman is than the senator, or does that kind of apply to what you're saying now a little bit in terms of just the closeness of people?
Well, I think what's happened is, I grew up in a family of politicians, which is kind of like saying you were raised by wolves. So I understand the political reference. We also see this in real estate, right? Where people say location, location, location. And that used to be the driving factor around employment. You hired people that were near to your office. Those days are gone, and they're not coming back. The top talent is not limited to your time zone. The best people aren't limited to folks who have been to your office. And as more employers recognize and realize that, the speed at which your organization becomes comfortable with that concept and philosophy will determine how you are able to navigate the coming years as more employees get comfortable working for remote employers and more employers get comfortable hiring and retaining employees that may not be in their local jurisdiction. So I think for lack of a better way of putting it, and we'll add a third analogy to this story, the horse is out of the barn, right? We're not going back. And I understand, and I want to be very clear, Brent, that I appreciate and empathize with the employer who is saying, this is so much harder than it used to be. I understand, and I don't disagree. But the difference between it being an employer and being a leader, in my opinion, is a leader will never make a situation worse than it actually is. While it is required to change our thinking, while it will be required to change our operational procedures and cadence, there is a path forward. And that path forward is to show and tell your employees how much they matter, to care for your people. And to become an employer of choice, it is really a question of what are you doing to make your team members feel valued, feel appreciated, feel seen, feel heard, so that coming to work feels like an advancement in their life, personally and professionally, as opposed to something they do between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. to earn a paycheck.
When there was a lot of conversation about how to lead the millennial generation before the pandemic, the joke was, just put bean bags and dartboards or pinball
foosball tables.
Foosball tables in the office and beer taps and all that kind of stuff. And, that'll make them feel good. But, in the virtual world, you can't solve problems with a bean bag. How much more difficult is it for leaders these days to help people feel like they matter with the virtual reality of work, and what can they do about that?
Well, I would posit, Brent, that the beanbags didn't work that great in the first place.
Yeah.
So I don't disagree with you that many employers saw it as, well, if we can make work feel like play, which usually meant accoutrement like video games and free lunches and, pinball machines, then that will solve all of our ills. No, that was basically, putting lipstick on a pig. It was basically implying that, hey, if we just have some cool, flashy things around here, we can distract you long enough to realize that our behaviors, our procedures, our methodologies, our policies don't really make you feel appreciated. They're not designed to be in your best interest. I don't disagree with you that in a remote environment, it is more difficult to create personal and emotional connection based purely on physical proximity. However, we now know things because of the remote environment that we should have known before as employers, but we have evidence of now. What am I talking about? For example, when we log on to a video conference call, whether that's Zoom or Teams or Skype or whatever tool you're using, we see the background of our employee's home. We see the decorations on the wall. We might see a family member or a child or a pet moving along in the background. We see how they've decorated. We see the things that they have surrounded themselves with in their home environment to make them feel comfortable. The things they love, the things they value, the things they appreciate. That's an opportunity for us to deepen the connection beyond this is what you do for your job, or these are the tasks I need you to complete today. Lots of times when I share this, folks get anxious, especially leaders. They say, well, Joey, doesn't that feel like an invasion of privacy? No, it feels like an honoring of someone's personality. When you recognize that your employees have lives between 5 p.m. and 9 a.m., as opposed to just paying attention to what they're doing between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m., you transcend the employer-employee relationship into one of, I care about you as a human being. The benefits that are available to an employee who works from home are significant. They can step away from their computer to put a load of laundry in. They can save time on their commute. Statistically, pre-COVID, I believe the most recent research that I've seen shows that more than 30% of Americans were super commuters. That's being defined as spending more than 90 minutes commuting each way. That's an hour and a half of their day that they've gotten back. And what I often see employers doing is lamenting, though, well, how do I know they're actually getting the work done? I need to be able to see them to understand that, they're being productive. Were you doing that when they worked at the office? Were you standing over them with a stopwatch, clocking every website they visited, every conversation they had, how much time they were spending in the water cooler? Or did you hire the type of employee who you trusted to interact with your customers, who you trusted to take care of your vendors, but yet now that they're working from home, you don't trust them? I'm a little confused at what changed.
We've kind of circled back to that word care and that concept of care. What are some ways, and it doesn't matter if it's virtual or in person, what are some of the ways that leaders can actualize caring to help people feel they're cared for, feel like they matter?
Well, Brent, I think if we dissect the concept of caring for another human being, we see that it is most easy to care when we can empathize with who that person is. We have an understanding of what makes them tick. We've done our best to walk a mile in their shoes. We appreciate what's going on in their life and the challenges they're facing, their hopes, their dreams, their fears, their concerns. One of the things I often question employers on is they will say to me, Joey, I absolutely care about my people. I care an immense amount. And I'll say, great. Let me ask a series of questions. And you stop me when you don't know the answer to the question I'm asking. First question, think of one of your employees, any employee. They think of one. I say, great. What is that employee's name? They kind of look at me curiously because this is almost like the SAT test. You get bonus points for just getting the name right. They thought of the person. They probably know their name. Okay, great. You got that question right. What is that person's relationship status? Are they single? Are they married? Are they dating? Sometimes they can answer that. Okay, great. If they are in a relationship, what is their significant other's name? Now, this is usually where leaders start to gloss a little bit. They're not sure. When I ask them, does this person have any children? Maybe they know, maybe they don't. What are their children's names? Maybe they know, maybe they don't. Does this person have any pets? Maybe they know, maybe they don't. What are their pets' names? They usually don't know. Where did this person go to college or university? Maybe they know, maybe they don't. What's this person like to do on the weekend? Maybe they know, maybe they don't. What's this person's favorite team? Their favorite book, their favorite movie, their favorite hobby? We quickly recognize that on what I would posit are some pretty basic questions about what makes a human tick, what's important to them, what they care about. Most leaders don't have the answers. They don't know. They've never taken the time to ask, or conversely, they've never taken the time to listen when the employee has shared that information. Or they've shared it in passing and they've never taken the time to record it, either to memory or in a CRM or an employee relationship management tool, or in some type of record that allows them, when they interact with that employee, to again refer back to the things that matter to them. Now, some employers would say to me, but Joey, you don't understand. We employ so many people. That's an unfair requirement. That's an unfair assessment. Folks, you didn't become leaders because you wanted to be treated fairly. You became leaders because you wanted to lead. And for those who are asked to lead and called to lead and given the responsibility to lead, a higher standard is applied. Interestingly enough, if I were to ask those same questions about your college roommate or your best friend, what's their relationship status? What's their significant other's name? Do they have children? Do they have pets? What's their hobby? What's their favorite team? Where did they go to school? Most leaders would be able to rattle off those answers without difficulty. I could ask them the same questions about a sibling, a cousin, someone in their close network of friends. No problem. But when I ask about their employees, they're at a loss. Interestingly enough, those same leaders, when I go to their corporate websites, statistically, I will find things like, welcome to our family. We treat our people like family. We don't know anything about our family, but we give them the lip service of calling it family. It just seems a little disingenuous.
One of the things that you talk about early on in the book as well is the onboarding experience of organizations. What do you mean when you say that most organizations aren't good at onboarding team members, and why do you think that is?
Well, I think there's a couple of things at play. The recovering attorney in me, I used to be a criminal defense lawyer. The first step's admitting you have a problem, folks. There's 11 steps after that. But let's look at it from an evidentiary definitions point of view, and then we'll look at it from a depth of engagement point of view. From a definitions point of view, I think many organizations misuse and confuse two words, orientation and onboarding. They use them synonymously when they aren't the same thing. I define orientation as an introduction to an employee's new surroundings and employment activities. These are things like, where's the bathroom? How long is lunch? What do I do if a fire alarm goes off? Ironically enough, the same things that you would be told in the first hour on a cruise ship if you went on a cruise. That's orientation, not onboarding. Onboarding is inviting in new employees through a managed, structured series of contacts designed to create a warm, welcoming experience. Let's break that definition down. Inviting in, not asking to join, not showing up on the first day, but an invitation to come into the organization through a managed, structured series of contacts, something that is intentional, something that is consistent, something that is ongoing. A series of touch points and interactions that are designed, not haphazardly thrown about, but rather designed to create a warm, welcoming experience. Not an orientation experience, not a new employee experience, a warm, welcoming experience. At the very definitional level, we see that many organizations' approach to the first day on the job is not meeting the bar of onboarding. It is just at base level orientation. Now, when we look at the second piece of this discussion, kind of the robust or consistent nature of a formal onboarding process, we see that in almost every organization, there is some form of a first day strategy. What is the employee's first day on the job going to be like? Sometimes the head of HR is responsible for that. Sometimes a direct manager is responsible for that. Sometimes it's a tag team between the two. But who in your organization is responsible for day 2 and day 3 and day 10? In most organizations, that falls to the manager. Managers who have never been actually trained in how to manage people. Rather, they were really good at the task. And so they were promoted to be the leader of their department. And now they're managing people for which they have no education, no training, no skill set for. And actually, in many scenarios, especially if we're talking about sales, have resentment for the fact that now they're responsible for managing people instead of doing the thing that they love doing that got them this promotion. If we want to create an onboarding experience, it needs to be intentional. If we want our employees to feel welcomed into the fold and appreciated and connected to what our organization is trying to do, we need to design it in a way that helps them become part of the team, that helps them feel connected to the organization, that helps them feel that they have a clear understanding of where things are. In fact, the research shows that organizations with a strong onboarding process improve new hire retention by 82% and productivity by over 70%. And when we ask, according to the Department of Labor, people, did you participate as part of your new job in an onboarding program that you would define as strong? Just that limited definition. Was your onboarding program strong? If they say yes, the average employee in that organization will stay for more than 3 years. In fact, 69% will stay for more than 3 years. Whereas the average across all industries is that 40% of employees will quit in the first year. In the world of hourly employees, it's more than half will quit in the first year. So we know that people are as quick to run out the back door as we bring them in the front. But if we have a strong onboarding program, our likelihood of increasing their retention, their connection, their engagement is much higher.
You say that in the book that you only get 100 days to get a team member experience right. Why does the first 100 days matter?
Because humans are humans. We make our decisions rather quickly as humans. We are looking to feel connected. We are looking to feel part of a team. We are looking to feel seen, heard, and understood early on in a relationship. And in an increasingly accelerating life and lifestyle, we're not willing to give more time. The first 100 days isn't based on my personal belief. It's based on the research. It's based on the significant number of people and how quickly they quit. As I shared earlier, 40% are going to quit in the first year. 22% are going to quit in the first 45 days. 4% are going to come to work, be there for one day, go home that night, and never come back again. 4% of new hires literally work one day on the job, and that's it. The thing that I found more staggering and more frightening than the speed at which employees were leaving is that the typical business is not paying attention to this time frame at all. They're not even tracking how quickly people leave, let alone why they leave, nor are they making the investments early on to create deposits in the karmic bank account to build a foundation with a new employee that will convince them, persuade them, encourage them to stay long term. If you get the first 100 days right, you can have a long-term employee. See earlier comment about a strong onboarding process leads to almost 70% of people staying for more than 3 years. Now we're talking. It's just about paying attention to those early foundational interactions and relationships that are being established if you want to have employees long term.
Why did you decide to write this book?
I always knew that customer experience was reliant on employee experience. I've been working in the customer experience space for 20 years, and I quickly recognized that you can't ask your employees to deliver a remarkable customer experience if they have no context for what one is. And the practical reality is most employers are not providing remarkable employee experiences for their employees to understand how to do this when interacting with customers. But I also want to give credit to my readers of my first book, Never Lose a Customer Again. A few months after it came out, I received an email. The email was quite simple. It was from a reader I'd never met, haven't met since, and it said, "Dear Joey, if you wrote a book called Never Lose an Employee Again, I would buy it." Signed, the customer's name.
It's a pre-order.
It's a pre-order, Brent. You're right. I got to admit, when I got that, I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. Hadn't really thought about writing a book called Never Lose an Employee Again, but that's interesting. Over the course of the coming months, I received email after email that was formatted exactly the same way. A very simple single sentence email. "Dear Joey, if you wrote a book called Never Lose an Employee Again, I would buy it." And in the interest of full disclosure, Brent, I had been a solo entrepreneur for several years at that point. I had run larger teams in past aspects of my career when I was a lawyer and when I was a business consultant and when I ran an ad agency. But as a speaker, which is how I spend most of my days, and a writer, I didn't have a team. I was a solo. And so I had disconnected from the emotional trauma, I mean pain, I mean frustration, I mean challenges of being an employer. And as I started to dive into it a little bit and talk to my friends and clients that were employers about the things that really bothered them, the things they really struggled with, the things they really were frustrated at not being able to solve for, employee experience and finding talent and onboarding talent and training talent and keeping talent seemed to be at the top of their list. And that led me on a multi-year research exploration, looking at businesses, small, medium, and large, online and offline, product and service, domestic and international, and identifying over 50 organizations worldwide that were remarkable at creating employee experiences. And those are the stories I tell in the new book, which, thanks to those early readers of my last book, is conveniently titled Never Lose an Employee Again.
So what are the similarities between retaining a customer and retaining a team member?
There is a journey that every human goes through when interacting with an organization. And if we track the progress of that journey, which not only includes our physical interactions, our tactical interactions, but our emotional interactions and our psychological and mental interactions, we can help navigate someone from a time period where they first hear about us to a resolving time period where they are an advocate, a raving fan singing our praises far and wide. The problem is most organizations want to jump from the first date to being married. They want to jump from that first interaction to, and now you're referring all kinds of new business to us. Instead of recognizing that every employee has 8 phases that they must go through, and they must spend time in each phase before they can navigate or transition to the next phase.
You talked a second ago about the interviews, the case studies that you did in doing research for the book. Tell me some of the most interesting, informative, unique things that you learned from these interviews, discussions, these studies.
Well, it's tough, Brent, because that's like saying, which is your favorite kid? And, you know, that's a tough one, but I'll do my best. Why don't I highlight, maybe 2 or 3 that stood out because of when they occurred in the employee journey. So I'll talk about 2 time periods, 2 of the 8 phases. One of the phases is the affirm phase. For those of you familiar with the context of a consumer purchase, you might have heard of the phrase buyer's remorse. There is a parallel phrase you may not be as familiar with that I'd like to introduce you to called new hire's remorse. It's that period between accepting the job offer and showing up for the first day on the job, where the new employee begins to doubt the decision they just made to come work with you. The other phase we'll talk about is the activate phase, which is the first day on the job, and what you can do to make that first day on the job so remarkable that they don't fall into that 4% who doesn't come back for day 2, and instead they come back for day 2 excited and engaged. Let's look at that first phase, the affirm phase, and I'll share a quick story from Trek Bicycle Corporation. If you are familiar with bicycles, you've clearly heard of Trek. It is a world-renowned company based out of Wisconsin in the United States that makes world-class bikes. Now, when I say world-class bikes, it is common for their bikes to cost $8,000, $9,000, $10,000. And when they're bringing people into their family in this affirm stage, after someone's been hired, before they show up for the first day on the job, their new employee receives a package in the mail. And that package they receive is the Trek Culture Book, a printed hardcover book, beautifully designed, that details the history of Trek Corporation. It shows pictures of all the bikes they've ever created. It actually lists out the names of all the employees that work at the company. Yes, they print a new book every year. It includes quotes and highlights from these individuals. It espouses the philosophy of the organization. It gets someone excited because they're basically getting a yearbook before they have their first day of class, before they start working for the organization. But my favorite part of the Trek Corporation's culture book is the Trekisms section. There's several pages in the book that detail Trekisms, phrases and words and acronyms that are used within the organization on a regular basis and what they mean. It gives the Trekism, it gives how it might be used, and it breaks down the story of why that phrase is used. Now, Brent, I haven't met an organization anywhere on the planet. I haven't gone into an organization anywhere on the planet where I haven't heard acronyms and words and phrases that as an outsider or a newcomer just didn't make sense. I didn't understand the local language, if you will. Trek solves for this problem by educating its new employees before they even show up at work. So when they're sitting at work on that first day and somebody uses a phrase that they don't understand, they have context for it. If an employee feels safe and secure on their first day, it increases the likelihood that they're going to enjoy their first day. So let's switch and talk about the first day and what makes the first day remarkable. And I'm going to give you a crazy, outlandish story, not because I want anybody listening to think you have to adopt this approach or this benefit in your organization, but just to show you that there are companies out there that are thinking very, very differently when it comes to employee experience. There's a company called 7 Rooms based out of New York City that makes software that helps hospitality organizations, hotels, etc., manage their reservations. And when you apply to work at 7 Rooms, you go through the application process. And then if you're offered the job and you accept the job, they say to you, when would you like your start date to be? And an employee to be might say, I'd like to start on the 1st of the month. And they say, fantastic, we'll see you on the 15th. The employee says, wait a second, I actually said the 1st. And they said, no, we understand that, but we actually want your first day at work to be the 15th. Now, what we're going to do is give you 2 full weeks of paid vacation before your first day. You'll officially start on the 1st. You'll be paid on the 1st. Your benefits will begin being awarded on the 1st. You'll have access to your health care, everything you need starting on the 1st, but you won't actually come to work until 2 weeks later on the 15th. Our only requirement for you participating in our Fresh Start program, which is what they call it, is that you come on that first day ready to tell us what you did. How did you spend your 2-week vacation? They've had employees go to Europe. They've had employees go hiking in the Northwest. They've had employees travel to see elderly family members that they hadn't seen in ages. They had one employee take a course to become certified as a wine expert. Now when the employee shows up for the first day on the job and they have a team luncheon where everybody gets to know each other, the new employee presents on how their fresh start left them mentally, emotionally, psychologically ready and excited for their new start at 7 Rooms. Those are but 2 of the 50+ case studies in the book, Brent. And each one is more unique, more interesting than the previous one. But what I hope all of them will show is that if you're willing to think creatively, if you're willing to do something that is a little bit different, you can dramatically change the experience your employees are having and dramatically change the way they speak about your organization in the marketplace.
I have a feeling that if I ask you what was one of the most important takeaways a leader could get from your book, this might be it. But explain to me the golden rule of employee relationships.
I love it. And you are absolutely correct, Brent, that the golden rule is applicable in the workplace as it's in many ways applicable in any number of contexts and scenarios. We need to do unto our employees as we would have them do unto us. If you want your employees to care about your organization, you need to care about them. If you want your employees to go the extra mile when interacting with your customers, you should go the extra mile when interacting with them. If you want your salespeople to make personal and emotional connections with prospects to convince them to come into the fold, you need to be creating personal and emotional connections with your salespeople to keep them in the fold. This stuff isn't rocket science. It requires attention. It requires intention, but it doesn't require a lot of money. Doesn't require a lot of structure, doesn't require an entire HR department. It just requires you as a leader deciding if you really want to invest in your people, not only financially, but emotionally. Do you want to care about what they care about? Do you want to know what they care about? Do you want to use your knowledge of what they care about to create opportunities, possibilities for them to feel even more connection to your organization because you celebrate what they care about? You're convinced and excited about their growth. I'll end with one quick statistic. Most employers, when I ask them, why are people quitting? Why are they leaving your organization? They lament, oh, they're leaving for more money. They're leaving for a bigger paycheck. We just can't afford that. People are coming in, they're poaching our people. They're going to pay them a lot more. There's nothing we can do to keep them. And while I understand that anecdotally, a leader might have had that experience or they might have that feeling, when we look at the statistics and the actual numbers, that's not the case. Some research that looked at 234,000 exit interviews, the most robust study that I've come across and I think has ever been done in terms of employee exit reasons, found that only 9% of employees left for more money. Now, while some might look at that and say, well, see, Joey, I was right. They leave for more money. I found myself saying, what's the other 91%? Why did they leave? And the number one reason people left, representing almost 24% of the people that departed, was because the employee didn't feel that there was a clear path forward for them at their current employer. They didn't see opportunities for growth, promotion, or achievement. Now, when most employers hear this, they say, but of course there's opportunities for growth and promotion and achievement if they would have just stayed. If they don't know what those opportunities are, they're never going to stay. They're not going to wait around and hope that something works. They want to see the path. That doesn't require any investment of money. That requires just sitting down with your employees and saying, where are you hoping to go? And to have that question more than once, not just in the what is mostly a pathetic interview question of where do you see yourself in 3 years? Have that conversation after they've been on the job for 6 months. Now that you know a little bit about our organization, where would you like to be next year? In this position? In a different position? In a different department? And how can we help you get to where you want to be to feel fulfilled, to feel challenged, to feel excited, to feel connected to the work and the impact we create here? It's not rocket science, but it does require effort.
Do you wish your people cared about your business as much as you do? Or do you care as much about your people as you do your business? The delineation between those two mindsets says a lot about your leadership. You can find out more about Joey, find out more from Joey at joeycoleman.com. And don't forget to find us and connect on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter at Barry-Wehmiller, and find more podcasts, articles, and videos at trulyhumanleadership.com. I'm Brent Stewart. Thanks for listening.